Welcome to The Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, could be articles, research, maybe even just our own notes, and we pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the real insights. Our mission, basically to give you that shortcut, to get you genuinely well informed, maybe with a few surprising facts, and hopefully keep it interesting. Today, we're diving deep into the new Seiko Prospex Speedtimer mechanical chronograph. That's the SRQ055. And look, it's not just about, oh, nice watch. There's a whole story here about precision, heritage, and even the world of motorsport, all kind of wrapped up on your wrist.
Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing how this specific piece of tech, this watch, connects to this much bigger historical story. It really isn't just another model dropped into a catalog. It feels significant in its category. It blends that rich past with what works today, especially if you're into engineering or design or both.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we get right into the brand new SRQ055, we kind of have to talk about its ancestor, right? From 1969. Why is that year, 1969, such a big deal for Seiko chronographs?
Right, yeah. That original 1969 Seiko Speedtimer was, well, a genuine breakthrough. A global first, really. It was the world's first automatic chronograph watch to have both a vertical clutch and a column wheel.
Okay, technical terms there. Vertical clutch, column wheel. What does that actually mean for, timing something?
Good question.
Yeah.
So the vertical clutch is key because it means when you start the chronograph, that seconds hand just goes instantly. No jump or stutter. Really crucial for accurate timing. And the column wheel, that gives you that really nice, crisp, positive click when you push the chronograph buttons. It just feels better, more precise. Back then, these things together seriously boosted the watch's precision and its reliability. It was a huge leap.
Okay, right. But here's where it gets really interesting for me, anyway. This isn't just a watch story. It ties into motorsport history, right? On your wrist. That same year, 69, the Datsun 240Z car also came out, a Japanese sports car that quickly became famous in global rallying. It actually won the super tough 1971 East African Safari Rally. And guess who was a big sponsor for that winning rally team?
Seiko, of course.
Exactly. Seiko. So imagine being a rally fan back in 71. The Speedtimer wasn't just telling time, it was like a badge of honor, almost a co-pilot on your wrist. It makes total sense that Seiko's still leaning into that legendary connection today.
Absolutely. That shared history, that spirit of motorsport precision and timing, it really does set the stage perfectly for Seiko's latest Speedtimer lineup for 2025. Including this SRQ055, it's not just a random throwback. It feels like a very deliberate continuation of that shared story. They respect where they came from, but they're still moving forward.
So this new SRQ055, it's a regular production model, right? Not limited edition.
That's right.
And it's launching alongside those limited ones, inspired by the Datsun, the SPB517, SRQ057, SSC957. So does that mean Seiko sees this one, the SRQ055, as more of the daily driver, the workhorse, while the limited ones are maybe more for collectors? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good read on it. The SRQ055 definitely keeps that strong, robust look of the earlier speed timers, like the SRQ051 and SRQ053, which people really liked. But it's not just a repeat. It's got some pretty significant updates, practical ones, visual ones too, that make it, I think, even better balanced. Really aimed at that person who wants to wear it every day. It feels built to be tough and easy to read. A proper tool watch.
Okay, let's talk about the feel of it. The specs say stainless steel case, 100 meters water resistance, 42 millimeters across, and 14.6 thick. That sounds, well, substantial, purposeful for a mechanical sports chrono.
Oh, definitely has that presence. It feels solid like you'd expect.
And what about that dual curved sapphire crystal? It's got anti-reflective coating inside. How does that affect actually using the watch day to day?
That crystal is great. The curve helps with distortion at angles, and the anti-reflective coating inside really cuts down glare. Makes it super easy to read the time quickly, whatever the light's doing. And speaking of easy reading, there's a key design change here that might seem small but makes a big difference.
Oh, what's that?
The tachometer scale, for measuring speed.
Right.
On earlier models, it was kind of squeezed onto the inner ring of the dial, the chapter ring.
I've seen that.
Well, now they've moved it outside onto a fixed bezel around the crystal. What that does is it just frees up so much space on the dial itself. Makes the whole layout feel cleaner, less cluttered. Honestly, it's one of those changes where you think, why wasn't it always like this? It just works better.
Makes sense. So the dial itself, it's black and keeps that classic chronograph layout, right? 30-minute counter at 9?
Yep, 30 minutes at 9.
12-hour counter down at 6?
At 6, correct.
And then the regular running seconds over at 3 o'clock.
Exactly. Standard, legible chrono layout.
And the details, it mentions applied indices. Those are the separate hour markers, right? Gives it a bit more depth.
That's right. They're physically applied to the dial, not just printed. Looks more premium, helps legibility too.
Plus crisp printing everywhere else, and there's a little round date window at 4.30.
And importantly, the date disc behind it matches the black dial. So it blends in nicely, doesn't jump out until you look for it.
Good touch. And LumiBright on the hands and markers for seeing it in the dark?
Of course. Seiko's LumiBright is excellent. It's their own luminescent paint, glows really brightly for a long time after just a little light exposure. Very practical for a sports watch. You need to see it in low light.
Okay, so the outside looks great, feels solid, easy to read, but the engine inside matters too, right?
Cool.
What's actually making the Speedtimer tick, and how does it tie back to that 69 legacy?
Right, the heart of the watch. Inside, we've got Seiko's own caliber 8R48.
Okay.
It's an automatic chronograph movement they've used before. It's well proven. Beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is a nice, smooth sweep for the seconds hand. Power reserve is quoted around 45 hours. Now, the source material does note this. Well, it invites improvement. Some modern movements offer more.
45 hours. Is that a big deal for a daily watch, or just compared to like 70-hour reserves we see sometimes?
That's a fair question. Look, for most people wearing it every day, or even every other day, 45 hours is totally fine. Take it up Friday night, pick it up Sunday. It's likely still running.
Okay.
Where those longer reserves really shine is if you have 5 watches you rotate through the week, then maybe the 45 hours means you'll need to wind it more often.
I see.
So yeah, it's not the absolute longest reserve out there, but for its intended purpose, as a robust daily chrono, it's perfectly adequate, still very reliable. And crucially, connecting back to 1969, just like its ancestor, this 8R48 movement uses both a vertical clutch and a column wheel.
Ah, so they kept that core technology.
Exactly. It shows that commitment to those original principles of precision and smooth operation is still there decades later.
And what about this MEMS technology? That sounds super high-tech. What does MEMS actually do for the watch on my wrist?
MEMS stands for Micro Electromechanical Systems. It's basically a super advanced manufacturing technique, like photolithography, that Seiko uses for some key parts of the escapement, the bit that regulates timekeeping.
Okay, so tiny, precise parts.
Incredibly tiny, incredibly precise parts. Think components made with microscopic accuracy. What this means for you, the wearer, is that these parts have less friction, they're more durable, and they contribute to better long-term accuracy and stability.
So it should keep better time for longer, maybe needs servicing less often?
That's the idea. It's about enhancing the fundamental precision and durability of the movement itself. It's kind of a quiet innovation deep inside the watch, but it shows Seiko is still pushing the manufacturing envelope.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about actually wearing it again. The bracelet. The notes call this one notable update. Its refined, newly styled links look sharper, but does it feel better?
Yes, definitely. It's not just about looks, though it does look sharper, more modern maybe.
Yeah.
The way the links are shaped and connect means the bracelet articulates better, flows more smoothly around the wrist.
So more comfortable.
Much more comfortable, I'd say. It distributes the weight better, less likely to pinch or pull hair. Compared to some previous Speedtimer bracelets, it's a genuine improvement in long-term wearing comfort.
And this model, the SRQ055, comes only on this steel bracelet, right, with the standard 3-fold clasp push-button release.
That's correct. Exclusively on the bracelet.
Which is a key difference compared to that Datsun-themed limited edition, the SRQ057. That one comes on a leather strap, kind of a rally style.
Exactly.
So that really does position this SRQ055 as the more everyday, versatile option, doesn't it? If you want to wear your Speedtimer all the time through anything.
Absolutely. The bracelet makes it the go-anywhere, do-anything version.
Yeah.
More robust for daily life, handles water better than leather. The SRQ057 with the leather strap, while very cool and tapping into that heritage vibe, is maybe a bit more specialized, perhaps more for collectors or occasional wear. The SRQ055 feels like the real workhorse of this new lineup.
Gotcha. And the price point for this workhorse, we're looking at EUR 2800, correct?
That's the listed price, yes. EUR 2800. So when you add it all up, the SRQ055 is just a really solid chronograph. It comes from a brand that has that genuine motorsport history we talked about, and the serious technical chops, the pedigree, to actually back it up. It nicely brings together that past and present we mentioned right at the start. Real innovation where it makes a difference for the person wearing it.
Wow, okay. That was quite the deep dive. So we've covered this incredible mix. The history, going back to that groundbreaking 69 original, that really cool, maybe surprising motorsport link with the Datsun 240Z. The design updates on this new SRQ055 that genuinely seem to improve how it looks and feels, especially that bezel change and the bracelet
Practical improvements?
and the mechanics inside, the 8R48 movement, keeping that column wheel and vertical clutch tradition alive, plus the high-tech MEMS stuff. It really does feel like a complete package. A great example of how a brand can, respect its history but still make smart, practical choices for today.
Which actually brings up maybe a final thought for you, the listener. When you think about things like precision or legacy in our fast-moving modern world, how do brands like Seiko manage it? How do they balance respecting that deep past, that heritage, while still pushing forward with practical innovations that work for people using these things today? It's worth considering that balance, honoring heritage versus embracing the new. You see it across so many fields, not just watches. It's often the key to staying relevant.
That's a great point to ponder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.